I'm always looking for new ways to improve my primitive survival skills, so this year I'm doing a wild food challenge where I'm gathering, hunting, and fishing as much wild food as possible to incorporate into my diet. A great starting point for this challenge is to study the different types of wild foods that Native Americans relied on to survive. Here in Western Oregon, one of the most important food sources was camas bulb. Where I live in the Willamette Valley of Western Oregon, we have two of the six species of camas found growing in North America. This includes common camas and the greater camas. Both species of this attractive purple flower were an important food source for the Kalapuya Indians, who would routinely burn the Willamette Valley on an annual basis in order to promote vast fields of camas in the wet prairie environments. Before I show you how to harvest and eat camas, a word of caution. That is, you need to be able to positively identify this plant. Flowers can vary in color from purple to blue to white. However, there is a deadly look-alike out there known as death camas, whose bulb is very toxic and could easily be confused with regular camas. I know of several fields where death camas is growing right alongside regular camas, and in digging each plant I was able to compare the bulbs, which are very similar in appearance. When digging camas, you need to make sure that there's no death camas growing in the area. I prefer to harvest camas bulb in late summer and early fall after the plant has gone to seed and is dormant. Camas is one of the first flowers to bloom in the spring, and by January already has a shoot growing out of the bulb. Traditionally, Native Americans harvested camas using a digging stick. However, I like to use the spike antler of an elk. The bulbs of the camas are located about 6 to 8 inches below the surface of the ground. A good size of camas bulb to harvest is about the size of a golf ball. It can take many years for camas bulb to grow to the proper size, so smaller camas bulbs should be placed back in the loose dirt. I have found that after digging in the same area for several years, camas production can actually be improved by this disturbance when harvested in a sustainable manner. In its raw form, camas bulb is basically inedible. It is very bland tasting, and it is so slimy that it feels like you put a slug in your mouth. Camas bulb also contains a complex carbohydrate known as inulin, which can be very difficult to digest and can result in stomachache and gas. Early settlers wrote about the strength of wind in the Indian hut, and Lewis and Clark describe how every man was nearly sick with a stomachache after consuming camas for the first time. To deal with this problem, the inulin in the camas bulbs can be slowly cooked and converted into more digestible simple sugars. This was traditionally done by steaming the bulbs in a pit oven using hot stones. I began by heating a number of stones in a campfire, and then rolled these heated stones into a pit. I then placed a layer of grass and thimbleberry leaves on the heated stones, and placed my camas bulbs on the layer of leaves. The final step is to place another layer of leaves on your bulbs and then cover this with heated rocks and dirt. The heat from the rocks and the steam from the wet dirt and leaves will slowly cook your camas bulbs. Traditionally, the camas ovens were much larger than the ones I'm showing here. After one day, my rocks cooled and I dug up the camas bulbs, but was disappointed to find that they were not fully cooked. After one day in the oven, the bulbs were still white, so I started the whole process over again and ended up cooking these bulbs for 3 full days. It was fascinating to see just how long camas bulbs take to cook. After 3 days, I had the golden caramel color I was desiring. Here you can compare how camas bulb looks after cooking for 1 and 3 full days. After 3 days, the complex carbohydrates in the inulin has broken down into simple sugars, which make the camas bulb much sweeter and more digestible. Once fully cooked, camas bulbs can be dried and stored for a long period of time. Camas bulbs were a very important food source for Native Americans living in the Pacific Northwest, and they served as an item of trade. I look forward to using camas bulbs in my wild food challenge.